Hi everyone, I'm Wendy Muse, creator of the LeftPOC Project, which brings you the history of leftists of color, one swipe at a time. And this is the LeftPOC Project podcast. So normally I start the episode with a reminder to check us out on social media, Soundcloud, wherever you get podcasts, to check us out on Patreon, etc. But I'm not going to do that today, only because I still have to do so much updating on all of those pages. So I feel bad sending people to pages that are not updated, that have really old information, or like things from before I took hiatus/break because I was losing track of everything and didn't have time to do anything, and still don't, think, perfectly honest. But I'm trying to make time to do these podcasts, so I'm getting better. But I need to take a little bit of a not break, but tomorrow I'll take some time to work on the social media pages and get those up to date, and then I will push them as per usual in all of the podcast episodes. And also, it just came to my attention last night that like Facebook changed its page to add information to pages, if that makes sense. So there are pages, for like blogs or vlogs or celebrities or whatever, politicians, etc. And so I have a page like that for LeftPOC, of course. And they changed the way to like add stuff onto the page. So I've got to go through that and kind of figure that all out. And then I will update things, get things back on track, and go from there. Also, tonight's episode was supposed to be the LeftPOC of the week, which just as a preview, her first name is Teresa. I will get to her later on, not tonight, unfortunately, because today just completely escaped me. I had so much going on, and I don't know, I just feel like I blinked and it was 11 p.m. And I have to wake up at 5 tomorrow because I need to go to New York again to teach. We're back on schedule because of school coming back in after the break. But the issue was just that, like, oh my God, the turnaround time is really difficult for the Podmas situation. And it's doable because I'm the only one doing the recording right now and the editing and stuff. When I start having on guests again, it's going to be a little bit more difficult, only because I'll be dealing with scheduling and things like that. And potentially additional editing, like if they want to say something off the record or whatever that I keep out of the interview for their privacy. So, we'll see. But anyway, enough rambling. On with the show. Today, instead of talking about Teresa, the unknown LeftPOC of the week that I will be announcing, hopefully tomorrow morning, / tomorrow at some point during the day. Today, I actually want to talk about jobs. And by that, I don't mean jobs themselves, but job applications. So I posted something recently that, on Twitter at least, that went incredibly viral. And I'm going to just pull up the actual tweet so that I don't misquote myself, as weird as that sounds. And that's apt to happen because my memory is so bad. But here we go. Okay, so this tweet, which as I speak right now, it's 11:26 p.m. on Monday night. This tweet has 119 likes and 17.4 thousand retweets, which is ridiculous. Like I don't understand. Like sometimes I'll just write the most random thoughts, like just kind of off the cuff thoughts, and they end up going viral like this. And it's happened before as well. Like I had a tweet about the Amazon fires crisis and how that was due to like Bolsonaro's shitty policies and like cattle farming and stuff like that. And it went really, really viral very quickly in like frightening ways, and kind of opened me up to way more attention from far right, like Brazilian far right people that I wanted. And although I should say I'm used to that because I talk about Brazil a lot because that's what the bulk of my research is on, and I've lived there and worked there and blah, 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 and often talk about Brazilian history. That's my specialty. But and because I'm a leftist, obviously, so whenever I post about Brazil, or not whenever, but oftentimes when I post about politics in Brazil, I get like really weird responses, because I'm critical of some of the far right stuff going on there, obviously, and that has been going on for decades. But I had never quite gotten the response from the far right that I got when I posted that, and of course, whenever I posted anything on Lula or elections coming up. So yeah, but it was like it was ridiculous. I had way too many people commenting on that post. And then another one that went viral was like some random thing again, off the cuff. It's like always off the cuff stuff, guys. That I posted a couple weeks back where I was just like, it's really something like, I was commenting on how sad it was that the concept of woke had been so distorted by the far right, and then like the fake leftists who pick up far right talking points, and who are brainwashed by far right talking points and end up regurgitating it into our left spaces. It's sad how that terminology got kind of ruined, because it started off as something that was like, a term among young Black people, and particularly young Black activists, about just being, up to date on what's going on in the world, and like being knowledgeable of what's happening in your community. It was a very positive thing, actually, to say someone was woke. But then it became, I think intentionally so, something that was distorted for the sake of demeaning activists, and in particular Black people. So it's like it had a weird kind of shift. And it's, to me, nowadays shorthand for, it's kind of a roundabout racist term, but it's definitely shorthand, and it's definitely often racist the way that it's used by those who are detractors from left organizing and goals, or just the far right in general. So the reason I mention these other things is just because like they're always weird when they go viral, and it's always strange because I get a lot of weird comments. But this most recent one about jobs was really, I guess, like hit a nerve, because it's still like literally as I've been talking, I've gotten about 200 more likes on this. Like, just that's the frightening degree of virality this tweet had. So I'm going to read it. Quote, Wendy Muse, quote, employers should be required by law to post salaries and job applications for every single job, period, no exceptions. It's ridiculous that we're still going through weeks of interviews only to find out what our salaries might be in the end. Transparency is key. And I say that because right now, I'm technically like searching for jobs in academia. I started off my PhD wanting to be a college professor. I think part of me still wants to do that, but I have such an interest in public history that sometimes I find it difficult to think about balancing those two things. And sometimes I wonder, like, do I want to be just like a regular professor, or do I want to do something kind of different and unique on the public history front? And of course, those two things can be combined. It's not like I have to choose one or the other. I mean, many historians who are just formal academics are also public historians and engage in like lots of public practice, public facing historical work and humanities work. So that's not impossible to combine. But nowadays, because of the pandemic, so many job searches are looking for people to basically do every damn thing. So like you're going to teach in, it used to be like you teach in one department, you have like one committee assignment, and like, you teach like 2 classes or 3 classes your first year or whatever max. And now they're like, we need you to teach 5 classes a semester and be on 10 committees, and you're going to teach in 5 different fields, even the ones that you may not have any expertise in whatsoever. We want you to teach those classes too. And you need to be in this public facing project, and you are going to be engaged in this and that. And we're going to pay you $40,000. So they're like, okay, they're asking for, basically your whole life to be devoted to this. So God forbid if you have a family or children or whatever, any other obligations or people you're caring for, good luck with that. But not only that, but like if you're relying on this job for financial sustenance, girl, you can keep it because it's not going to happen. I mean, it's really, it's a joke, right? Like it's almost an affront. It's not almost, it's very much an affront to the hard work that people put into their lives every single day and into their jobs every single day. When you think about what people are getting paid in this country, it's almost like the harder you work, the less you get paid. And it's really, really frustrating. And I'm not even getting to the point about like, people who work in low wage or hourly wage labor, people who work in low salary jobs, people who are secretaries and personal assistants and working at fast food restaurants and restaurant workers in general, and like people who are janitors and maids and nannies. I mean, the list goes on and on and on about people who are underpaid and I mean, it's just like, it's such an unfair system altogether. But to add insult to injury, many times, for these jobs that have such high demands, you don't know what your pay is going to be up front. And if you look at job ads right now, to this day, because it's not legally enforced, not in every state at least. Some people commented on the post saying that, like in some states, they're starting to require it by law, which is great, or at least to allow you to ask, and they be obligated to tell you. But who knows how that's going to affect your job prospects, right? Like that's the other thing that's kind of messed up about it. There's this unspoken rule, particularly in academia, but many other quote unquote white collar jobs as well, where you are expected to not ask. So you may go through a week or two or even longer of deliberations with these people. So you may go through rounds of interviews. You may go through weeks of preparation. You may have to, of course, you're going to have to send in references and, recommendation letters and teaching references, all this stuff. You have to, that's the other thing. The demand for what you're supposed to send in with your application packet is getting bigger and bigger. Like what they're asking for, they're basically like, can you send us a book that you just wrote in a week, and then also submit yourself to like weeks and weeks of interviews that take full days. And of course, you may have other obligations like parenting or your family, or you're taking care of someone elderly, or you may have other jobs. Like, there's a list of things that really complicate this further. But the assumption is often, like in academia, that everyone's just like a single white male who's upper class, or a married white male who's upper class, who has a wife who's a housewife, who, not to say that housewives don't have a full-time job, because they do, and I fully recognize that as a mother. But the assumption on the other end, right, the end of employers, is that a housewife is like an at-home secretary, right? So she's going to help you with all your academic work and things like that, which back in the day was common. And still, there are some professors right now, male professors, who have wives who basically do all their work for them and don't get any credit for it. So anyway, I don't know anything about that. But I think that we, as a society, need to pressure employers more, if at all possible, maybe through legislation or through other means, to really, be transparent about how much they're paying us at the jump, right? Because before you should submit to that much, in a job application, and I know there are other jobs that are similarly strenuous in terms of their application process, maybe not in quite the same ways, but definitely strenuous in their own ways. That may require days and days of interviews and workshops and stuff like that before you really get told like what the expectations are for you and how much you're going to get paid if you fulfill them. Sorry, I lost my sentence there, but basically, I know there are lots of other jobs out there like this too that have these kinds of crazy, practically long-term relationship style interviews, and then they dump you without a moment's notice, right? Like you might get rejected from the job, but they never tell you anything. I mean, literally in academia, you could be a finalist for a job and you could have gone through weeks of interviews, rounds of discussions with people. You could have taught a class, done it, just like so many things, and then sent in your thank yous, and you just never hear from these people again. And you don't know why. You feel like you did something wrong. You have no idea what happened, and it may have nothing to do with you. It's just part of the process, which to me is absurd and like just wrong, like on so many levels. But to add insult to injury, as I said before, many of these jobs don't tell you what you're going to get paid up front. You find out midway in the process. And then you're given the choice of, do you want to proceed, or do you want to keep, do you want to end this right now? And on the one hand, if you really want the job, of course, you're going to say, I'm okay with it, or you're open to negotiations or whatever. But it still puts you in this weird position, because you're like, wow, well, if I say that I would prefer more pay, you feel like you're not going to be up for the job anymore, right? You feel like you're not in a point where you have the advantage to negotiate then. And this is the case for many jobs, again, not just academia. And it's unfair, and it's wrong, and it puts the entire hand on that of the employer, even though they're the ones who are asking for people to work for them, right? Like, that's the crazy part of it. You are the one who, of course, it's like an audition, but they're the ones who need the person to fill that space too, right? Like, it's a mutual exchange of sorts, right? They need someone, and you need a job, and so you all are meeting somewhere in the middle in terms of, at least you should be meeting somewhere in the middle in terms of the power that you can exercise in this exchange. And yet they pretty much hold all the power if they don't tell you what they're going to pay you up front, and if you don't know what you're going to necessarily have to do in that position until later on. Like, sometimes these things come out later on, after you're like, oh yeah, I'll take this low pay, and then surprise, surprise, you have to do all this extra work. This happens quite a bit in academia. And it particularly happens a lot to, faculty and staff of color, often women of color as well, who kind of end up fulfilling all these extra roles, not just as teacher or, professor or whatever, but also as mentor, also as, like unlicensed psychiatrist to help students with emotional issues, or dealing with racism, or dealing with sexism or homophobia or whatever that they're experiencing in their families, at the school, etc. You are a writing coach. You are, helping with so many different aspects of their lives that really, this kind of silenced, invisible work that goes under recognized, if recognized at all. These are things that don't show up even potentially on the teaching evaluations, right? Like, sometimes you'll spend so much time with a student, and you'll work with them so much and so closely, and they may not even submit their eval at the end of the year. Maybe they were sick on the day that they did the in-class eval. Like, you just never know. And the fact that, there are many aspects of academia that are thankless, but I think that the most frustrating one right now is the application process, because for the reasons that I've already laid out, but I think also just because there's so many aspects to it that just straight up disrespect us as PhD students, people applying to these jobs, young, or like not young, but like early academic types, first time teaching in a professional job like that, to that degree. And beyond just like being TAs and things like that. And it's frustrating. And like, there are people right now, we talk about adjunct professors all the time, and it's like pretty much all the jobs out there, a lot of them are adjunct based, or they may say they're tenure track, but the second you do anything wrong, or quote unquote wrong on the part of the university, or if you say anything that's a little too spicy, you might find yourself off that tenure track, if you know what I mean. I've heard of stories like that. I've seen cases like that, right? Where professors have said something about criminal justice, or have said something about Palestine or whatever, and they have lost hiring. They've lost job offers. They've lost jobs. They've been ostracized to the point that they've had to leave their jobs. So this is real. Like, it's precarious labor in many ways, despite what people might think about what academia represents. I think a lot of those people have the idea of academia that comes from Hollywood, and not an idea of academia about what's happening in real life to people, right? Like, people who are actually in it. But stepping away from academia for a little bit before I close, many jobs. I've worked other fields too prior to entering academia in this formal way, and like, it was the same problem. Like, I've been a translator. I've worked as a secretary. I've worked as like kind of like paralegal. I've worked as a billing assistant, whatever, coordinator, whatever you want to call it, analyst. I think they call it billing analyst at a law firm. Like, I've done all kinds of work. I've done stuff on the side, just obviously, if you want to count the podcast as kind of a small business in and of itself, and in these jobs where I'm working for other people, I haven't always known what my salary was going to be until the last part of the hiring process. But, they don't take into account that, like, you spend so much time preparing for these interviews, going to the interviews. You have to buy clothing for the interviews. That's another, like, whole other problem. And now in the post-COVID world, and when I say post-COVID, I don't mean COVID is over. I mean, like, following the introduction of COVID, if you will, in these COVID times, like all those commercials used to start. I think we see even more. It's like everything is virtual, right? So we're doing so much on Zoom, but at the same time, the expectations are still as if we are there in person. So you still have to dress a certain way. You still have to have your hair and makeup a certain way. There are all these like expectations that are still left over from the time before COVID when everything was in person. And, I'm just talking about white collar work at the moment, but even if you're looking at interviews that are in person from the jump, they're still expecting people to be 100% when the world is not 100%, right? Like when we as human beings are not 100%. There are people who are still worried about dying. People who have lost relatives, people who have lost loved ones and friends, people who have lost leaders in their community and mentors and, colleagues and you name it. And the expectation that we just go on as if nothing is happening, as if the wheels just keep on turning, like there's no pandemic happening, like there's no, intense soul-crushing, bone-crushing reality of capitalism as it currently stands and technically as it began as well. We just can't look at this and think that people are going to be okay and that people are going to be able to just say, okay, I will submit to all of these hoops that you want me to jump through without knowing what's at the end of it. That's just wrong. And people sit here and wonder, not people, but executives and upper class, rich people sit here and wonder why no one wants a job right now. Why no one wants to go to apply and work for a job that's going to treat them like garbage and pay them worse, And you can throw all of the benefits out against the wall as you want in hopes of something being, something sticking. And people are still going to say no because they're fed up. They're tired of being mistreated. They're tired of being, led on basically in this process. And I think that goes for any level of labor right now. Unless you're somebody's like a CEO's son, you don't have to worry about your next paycheck or food being on your table or losing your house or your apartment or your car or whatever. If you don't have those worries, good for you. Congratulations. You made the lottery of life. But the rest of us are worried about these things and are frustrated by the process. And, I think that there is a light at the end of the tunnel if we decide to come together and fight what this mistreatment is and things that we see happening on a regular basis. If we unionize, if we have other means of, expressing grievances and acting upon them that may be off the record, if you know what I mean. But I think in general, we have to come up with ways to first articulate these problems and not let corporate media or other, even some left media kind of distort what's actually happening, because the reality is workers are rightfully fed up. Workers are mistreated and underpaid and not treated with the same fairness that those who are their employers are often, given. And they shouldn't have to submit to the runaround just because they're the ones applying for the job. That's not how it should be. Because at the end of the day, as I said before, the employers need workers. And if they want those workers to do well at their jobs and be happy in their jobs and be productive, then the relationship needs to start with transparency, with honesty, and with fair hiring practices and a clear set of expectations for what's demanded of the worker, but also of what that worker can demand of their employers. This should be the norm. But right now we're fighting for crumbs and people are expecting us to just be fine with that. And they won't even tell us how many crumbs we get. So it's a real problem. Anyway, I'm going to end on that note, guys. I'm going to work on, like I said, some of the social media stuff tonight and tomorrow so that when I tell you to check us out on Facebook, SoundCloud, Twitter, blah, 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 blah. It'll be more up to par and to the expectations that I personally have for you all or at least for myself, for you all to see of LeftPOC and the Left Pocket Project as a whole. So on that note, as I always say, please take care of yourselves. There will be more of this Podmas extravaganza coming up later on. Of course, as I said, tomorrow / this morning, in a few hours, whatever, I'm going to record the LeftPOC of the Week Podmas episode about Teresa Beep. And then you will get more information from there about her life and the amazing things that she did and sort of the way that she can inspire many of us in the present. And until then, as I said, have a good night. Enjoy yourselves. Please take care of yourselves most of all. And be kind to workers out there, y'all. I mean, we're interacting with workers on a daily basis, but please don't treat workers like crap. Like, people are going through so much right now and always have been, but especially right now, it's like amplified to ways that I can't even properly convey. And people just need to be really sensitive to that and see every day that people are struggling, and it's a real situation, it's a real problem, and we shouldn't add to the already pre-existing problems that people are facing by being you-know-whats to people who are helping us meet our daily needs on a daily basis. Anyway, bye everyone.